Let me tell you about how criminal defense strategies actually work in high-stakes cases, because the context matters for understanding what just happened. When you're building a defense for someone facing serious federal charges, you identify your strongest asset, your best witness, your most compelling evidence, the cornerstone upon which everything else rests. You build your entire legal architecture around that foundation. Your motions reference it. Your public statements rely on it. Your negotiations with prosecutors assume it. Everything flows from that central pillar. And when that pillar doesn't just crack, but completely inverts, when it becomes a weapon aimed directly at your client, you don't just lose a piece of evidence. The entire building collapses. The structure cannot stand. That's what just happened to Donald Trump. If you want to understand what it looks like when a defense strategy suffers catastrophic failure, subscribe to this channel right now. Because what I'm about to walk you through is the legal equivalent of watching a controlled demolition, except nothing about this is controlled. What we're learning from multiple sources with direct knowledge is that Trump's star witness, the individual around whom the entire defense was constructed, has flipped to the prosecution. Not in some limited cooperation arrangement where they provide narrow testimony on specific topics. Full immunity, complete testimony, total documentary production. This witness was present for every critical meeting. They had access to every sensitive document. They were in the room where it happened. And according to sources inside the Manhattan District Attorney's office, they just agreed to testify under oath about everything they witnessed. Everything. Let me walk you through the timeline, because the speed tells you how devastating this is. January 7th, just days ago, Trump's legal team was still expressing confidence. The defense was solid, they said. Their witness was reliable. Their strategy was sound. The prosecution had overreached and would fail. Then came January 8th. Prosecutors executed a surprise search warrant at the witness's residence. And what investigators found apparently shocked even seasoned professionals who've spent careers pursuing white-collar crime. Financial records documenting millions in previously undisclosed payments. Encrypted communications that, once decrypted, revealed the mechanics of the alleged conspiracy in granular detail. And audio recordings, multiple audio recordings of conversations with Trump himself discussing the alleged illegal activities in what sources describe as explicit, unambiguous terms. The witness was brought in for questioning that same day. By January 9th, less than 24 hours later, they had agreed to full cooperation in exchange for immunity. Now I want to pause here, because what that immunity agreement means is critical. When prosecutors offer full immunity, they're making a calculated bet. They're saying what this person can give us is more valuable than prosecuting them for whatever crimes they committed. And there's a powerful mechanism built into these agreements. If the witness lies, if they withhold information, if they shade the truth in any material way, the immunity evaporates. They become prosecutable again for everything, plus perjury. So when a witness signs one of these agreements, they have an overwhelming incentive to tell the complete truth, every embarrassing detail, every incriminating fact, because holding anything back risks destroying their own deal. That's the position this witness is now in, and that's the nightmare Trump's legal team is facing. Let me tell you what sources say this witness has already provided. 40 hours of testimony to the grand jury, and that's just initial debriefing. Additional sessions are scheduled for this week. Approximately 3,000 documents, financial records, correspondence, internal communications, transaction records, 17 audio recordings. Now, I've covered criminal cases for years. Audio recordings of defendants discussing their alleged crimes are extraordinarily rare. They're the kind of evidence defense attorneys have nightmares about, because there's no good way to explain them away. You can't claim the witness is misremembering. You can't argue they're biased or confused. The defendant's own voice, in their own words, describing their own conduct. That's as close to incontrovertible as evidence gets. And sources who have been briefed on these recordings describe them as devastating. Trump's voice is clearly audible. The discussion of allegedly illegal activities is explicit. In one recording, Trump allegedly says, and I'm quoting what sources have shared, "The key is making sure there's no paper trail back to me. You handle it, but I never touched it. Understand?" In another, he allegedly discusses specific dollar amounts for illegal payments and provides instructions on how to structure those payments to avoid detection. This isn't ambiguous language that skilled defense attorneys can recontextualize for a jury. This is, if the descriptions are accurate, precisely the kind of direct evidence prosecutors dream about but rarely obtain. And here's where this gets worse, because this witness isn't just testifying about the crimes Trump is already charged with. According to sources inside the prosecution, the witness is revealing entirely new criminal activities that investigators didn't even know about before this cooperation began. Additional financial crimes, potential obstruction of justice, possible violations of federal election law. One prosecutor, speaking on condition of anonymity, described the situation as Christmas morning for the prosecution team. If you're still watching, hit that like button right now, because what I'm about to tell you is why Trump's legal team has entered full panic mode. For the past 18 months, Trump's defense was built around this witness's anticipated testimony. The plan was clear. The witness would take the stand and testify that all allegedly illegal activities were conducted independently, without Trump's knowledge or consent. This is classic defense strategy in cases involving powerful defendants. Find someone lower in the organization willing to fall on their sword and use their testimony to create reasonable doubt about the principal's involvement. Trump's lawyers filed motions based on this anticipated testimony. They made public statements relying on it. According to sources, they rejected plea negotiations from prosecutors because they were confident this witness would deliver reasonable doubt at trial. They put all their eggs in this basket because they believed, after more than a decade of demonstrated loyalty through multiple controversies, that the basket was unbreakable. Instead, that witness is now prepared to testify to the exact opposite. They're prepared to testify that Trump personally directed every action in question, that Trump reviewed every relevant document, that Trump approved every payment. The defense narrative doesn't just fall apart. It inverts into a prosecution narrative told by a witness with documentary evidence and recordings to back up every word. Let me tell you what's happening inside Trump's legal operation right now, because the chaos tells you everything. Sources with direct knowledge describe an atmosphere of pure panic mixed with rage. Emergency meetings are happening hourly. Lawyers are arguing with each other about strategy, about who vouched for this witness's loyalty, about what the path forward could possibly be. At least 2 senior attorneys are reportedly preparing to withdraw from the case entirely. Think about what that means. Seasoned criminal defense lawyers with decades of experience are looking at this situation and concluding it may be beyond salvage. One attorney with direct knowledge told reporters the mood inside Trump Tower alternates between volcanic rage and stunned disbelief. They're not just worried about losing the case anymore, this source said. They're worried about what this witness knows that they don't yet know the witness knows. Here's what makes this flip so particularly catastrophic. The witness has provided what sources describe as a second set of books. Not the official financial records shown to banks and tax authorities, but a parallel set of records showing the real numbers. If accurate, this is explosive evidence because it demonstrates intent. This isn't aggressive accounting. This isn't ambiguous interpretation of complex regulations. This is, according to sources, systematic fraud with documentation proving the fraudsters knew exactly what they were doing. Prosecutors call this evidence that removes any possible defense of ignorance or mistake. You don't maintain 2 sets of books by accident. Let me focus on the audio recordings for a moment, because their contents as described by sources are worth examining. Beyond the quotes I mentioned earlier, sources say one recording captures Trump discussing what would happen if the scheme were discovered. According to these sources, Trump can be heard saying, "If this ever comes out, you take the fall. I'll pardon you if I have to, but you never mention my name." If this recording exists and says what sources claim, the implications are extraordinary. It suggests advanced knowledge. The activities were criminal. It suggests conspiracy. It suggests planning for obstruction of justice. And it suggests contemplated abuse of presidential pardon power to cover up crimes. This isn't prosecutors inferring intent from circumstantial evidence. This is allegedly the defendant's own voice articulating exactly the kind of criminal intent that's typically hardest to prove. The ripple effects are already cascading. 3 other potential witnesses who previously refused to cooperate are now reconsidering. They're seeing that cooperation is possible, that protection is available, that immunity deals exist for those with valuable information. Prosecutors are reportedly in active negotiations with at least 2 other key figures who have indicated willingness to testify in exchange for leniency. This is what prosecutors call a cooperation cascade. One witness flips, and suddenly everyone else realizes they're in a prisoner's dilemma. The first ones to cooperate get the best deals. Wait too long and you lose leverage. An investigation that seemed to have stalled is now accelerating at a pace that has surprised even the prosecutors themselves. Federal prosecutors from multiple districts are now interested in debriefing this witness. The IRS has expressed interest. The Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network has requested access. The SEC is reviewing potential securities violations. What began as a New York State prosecution could become a cascade of federal cases spanning multiple jurisdictions. And here's the element that legal experts are focusing on with particular intensity: The witness has evidence about what happened after the investigation began. Text messages discussing the destruction of evidence, communications about coordinating testimony, discussions that prosecutors believe constitute witness intimidation. These aren't just additional crimes, they're crimes that demonstrate what lawyers call consciousness of guilt, evidence that the defendant knew they had done something wrong and took steps to cover it up. Prosecutors particularly value obstruction evidence because it undermines any defense based on claims of innocence. Innocent people don't typically coordinate testimony, destroy documents, or intimidate witnesses. The witness's knowledge extends beyond Trump himself. Sources indicate this individual worked closely with several Trump family members and has detailed knowledge of their involvement in various business operations. While prosecutors haven't indicated they're currently targeting family members, the witness's testimony could change that calculation. Sources say Trump is particularly enraged about this aspect, viewing the possibility that his children could face legal exposure as the ultimate betrayal. Now, Trump's public response has been predictably aggressive, but legal experts say potentially self-destructive. His social media posts have escalated from confident dismissal to what observers describe as increasingly unhinged attacks on the witness. He's called them a rat, a liar, a traitor. He's questioned their credibility in terms that could constitute witness intimidation. His attorneys are reportedly pleading with him to stop posting. But Trump appears to believe his only hope lies in rallying public opinion, in framing this as persecution rather than prosecution. The problem is these posts are becoming evidence themselves. They potentially demonstrate consciousness of guilt. They could influence jurors, and they may constitute additional criminal conduct in the form of witness tampering. Every post he makes strengthens the prosecution's case. Let me paint the picture of what's happening behind closed doors, based on what sources describe. Inside Trump Tower, the emergency meetings are chaotic beyond description. Lawyers shouting over each other, Trump demanding solutions that don't legally exist, staff members quietly updating resumes. One source described it as watching the Titanic sink in real time. They know they've lost their best defense and probably the case, but they have to keep fighting because the client demands it. Several junior attorneys have already begun quietly looking for new jobs. The exodus from Trump's legal team is only beginning. What makes this witness particularly dangerous isn't just what they know, it's who they are. This isn't some low-level employee trying to save themselves. This is someone who was in Trump's inner circle for more than a decade. Someone who attended family events. Someone trusted with the most sensitive information the organization possessed. Prosecutors are reportedly thrilled not just with the evidence, but with how this witness will present to a jury. They're articulate, they're detailed, they have documentary evidence to support every claim. This is what prosecutors call a dream witness, someone whose testimony carries inherent credibility because of their proximity to the defendant and their access to corroborating documentation. Trump's remaining legal team is attempting to challenge the admissibility of this evidence, but legal experts say their chances are slim. The witness had legal authority to make the recordings under applicable state law. The documents were obtained through proper legal channels. The immunity agreement ensures the witness has every incentive to tell the complete truth. So where does this go from here? Prosecutors are preparing what sources describe as a shock and awe presentation for the jury. The witness is reviewing thousands of documents to ensure their testimony is comprehensive and accurate. Visual aids are being created to illustrate exactly how the alleged criminal enterprise operated. Meanwhile, Trump's team is searching frantically for any defense that might create reasonable doubt, and behind-the-scenes negotiations are reportedly happening about potential plea arrangements that would have been unthinkable just 1 week ago. The constitutional implications are profound. This is the American legal system working as designed, applying the same standards to the powerful as to everyone else. Evidence matters, witness testimony matters, documentation matters. And when those elements align, as they appear to be aligning here, even the most resourceful defendant faces accountability. Subscribe to this channel if you want continued coverage as this develops. Turn on notifications because major developments are coming daily now. Drop a comment. What do you think happens next? Does this end in conviction or plea deal? Share this with someone who needs to understand that when your star witness walks into the prosecutor's office with 17 recordings, 3,000 documents, and 40 hours of testimony, the game is fundamentally over. This isn't another legal setback to be managed with spin and delay tactics. This is the systematic destruction of a defense strategy that until 72 hours ago appeared functional. When your central witness becomes the prosecution's most powerful weapon, when they bring recordings and documents and detailed testimony about direct involvement, the legal calculus changes completely. This isn't speculation. This is evidence from inside the innermost circle, backed by documentation that can't be explained away. The only remaining questions are how complete the collapse will be, how many others will choose cooperation over loyalty, and what additional evidence will emerge as this process continues. Something is breaking, not gradually, not theoretically, right now, in real time, with consequences that will reverberate for years. The star witness has flipped, the recordings exist, the documents are in prosecutors' hands, and the legal walls aren't just closing anymore. They've closed. I'll see you in the next breakdown as this continues to unfold. Because it's unfolding fast, and you need to understand what total strategic collapse looks like in the American legal system. The defense is gone, the witness has turned, and nothing can put that back together. Stay with this story. The next chapter is coming.